My name is Mel Goldberg. I was producer for Public Access when we interviewed and videoed World War II veterans. Now it's time for the home front. We have 4 women here who will discuss what they did during that time. Mary?
My name is Mary Seymour, and when World War II broke out, I was in church that evening, and it became very somber and quiet, and we were all in shock. I was a teenager, but I was working for this oil company, and we had to adjust to a new way of life. And one by one, all our young men started to leave us. Mm-hmm. And that's the adjustment we made in our lives.
My name is Ruth Dalgo. I was a nurse at Queens General Hospital. My to-be husband had just left for training in Augusta, Georgia, and when I heard that the war had broken out, I almost, what should I say, I was stunned, because then I knew, I had a feeling that he, like a lot of the other young men, would be sent away, definitely away to Europe possibly, or to Asia. And I just gathered myself together, went on with my work, and thought, dear God, please let it not be a long war for all our wonderful, wonderful young men, please. And I said a prayer for myself and everybody who was connected with me, all my friends who also had boyfriends or husbands in the war.
Phoebe?
Well, I was also a teenager, and the night that I heard that we were in a car coming home from a double date, we heard this news, and both the young men that we were with were ROTC people, so we knew that, and they knew that this was going to mean very quickly that they were going to go into service and go overseas. One of those men was my husband-to-be. I didn't know that at the time. And it was a few years later. He was still not called to duty. But we decided no matter what, we would get married, because that's what we planned. And so we did. And 5 months later, he was called to duty. And that was a very short honeymoon, but very dear, of course.
And where did he go?
Well, he never left the States, because he was in training as a high-speed radio operator, and he was in air-sea rescue service. And so most of his duty was in Florida.
Right. And Lucy?
My name is Lucy Berglund. I was a young teenager when the news broke out. I think everyone in our household was taken back. As I valued each and every moment that I saw from there on, it was quite a shock. I was growing up, and of course I met my husband after the war. He was a prisoner of war in the Pacific area, and the rest, of course, went along. We went along with whatever was happening at the time, food, clothing. We were limited with a lot of stuff.
Well, that's the point now. You can all get together. What was going on at that time with whatever
We had
it was?
rationing of food. It wasn't easy to shop for meat, cheese, sugar. Those were big items.
Did you all have ration books?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we
yes.
did. And gas, of course, was a big
Gas was
gas
a
you
problem.
could not get. A lot of people had to give up their cars
Right.
because they couldn't go. They were
Yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm. And what else was going on? And the silk and nylon went for parachutes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
What happened to the silk stockings?
We had a problem getting them. We used to be notified, like one neighbor would tell the other, stockings today in the department store, so we'd all run and wait online. Clothing, the hems of the skirts were shortened because they needed the material for the service men and women.
I didn't know that.
What else?
And what about the stockings? I understood they used to have seams.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yes, the
they were
seams in
very
the back.
fashionable.
What did you do without the
course.
stockings?
Well, I think people painted their legs. Some of them.
Yes, they had makeup.
They had makeup and they made
Leg
the seam
makeup.
with the dark chalk.
That was very popular.
And that's right, and the women were very creative during
Yes.
that time. They had a lot. There were lots they could not get, but they managed to have that look, right?
Right.
That little flirty look, even though the guys weren't around.
Well, what did you do about dancing?
Oh, that was a problem.
Well, we
That-
just were with our girlfriends. We did everything with our friends. We took little trips together, and
Into the
men
city?
were all gone. They
Yeah.
were just gone, and we had to entertain ourselves and
Right.
do things.
That's right.
And
I know. I remember reading a lot. I hadn't read that much.
Yes.
I was busy working. I was a nurse, and I'd come home evening. I was living with my sister at the time, and she said, "Well, what are we going to do tonight?" And her husband too was in the armed forces, but he wasn't overseas. He was someplace here in the United States. So I'd say, "Well, we can't go to a movie." The lights were outside. They were saving
Dimmed,
electricity.
yeah.
Remember that?
yes, they dimmed them.
Saving
yes.
electricity.
Yes.
I said, well, never mind. I have a good book. So I read so many books.
And Life magazine,
Uh-huh.
and what was Saturday
Evening Post?
Saturday News. Oh yes,
yes,
Saturday
yeah.
paper
Right,
magazine.
Do you remember vaudeville years ago?
Oh, yes, I
Right?
do. Yeah.
Oh, there was one place that had vaudeville, and I usually on a Saturday, and I made it in the city. I made up my mind to go and see some of the acts, and if I tell you, some of them were really. We had comedians, we had dancers, we had people who did not go to war, young men, and it was pure entertainment for us then. I remember that name, vaudeville.
Yes,
Yeah,
and the Paramount Theater,
that's right.
the Met. I think it was Loewy's Met, if you remember that.
Right.
I remember the theaters because they had moving clouds and everything. The ceilings were lit up so that it would look like stars,
Yes,
and of course you'd have some great young singer to turn you on.
People became very creative during that period during the war, I believe,
Yeah.
because they had to. We had no choice. We
What
didn't
did
want to
you-
bury our heads and just bury ourselves. So, as you say, the vaudeville and the Paramount Theater. So we managed.
What did the parents do? Your parents during this
they
time?
were homemakers. They were just there.
You talked about the no light, no electricity, the blackouts.
That's right.
How
were
about air raid
frequent.
wardens?
Yes.
Yes,
Did you
We
have air raid
practiced
wardens in the
that.
family?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
not in my family, but in the neighborhood, they would come around.
Make sure
Lights
there
had
was
to be
no-
out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very important.
I remember something about lights out. Very interesting. When I married my husband, it was during the war. It's before he went overseas. And he said, we haven't had a honeymoon. And I said, this is my honeymoon. We rented a house. He said, let's go to Miami. Let's go to Miami. So we drove to Miami, went to a beautiful hotel. We were right on the beach, and there were lights out. At night, you had no lights at all. Even the hotel was dark. And I used to try to find where I was, where the bed was, where the sink was. I remember that so vividly. There were no lights. It was so depressing looking out there. And they had guards on the beach walking back and forth with their little lights. I remember that so well. Everything changed.
Yes. How about collections? Did you have anything with metal? You talked about something
Yes, pennies. They took the copper penny and used it for ammunition. So the government came out with the idea, excuse me, that we would have steel pennies with zinc coating. Does that replace the copper penny? Excuse me.
Any other metals that were? Do you remember anything about that?
No. I
Remember
don't recall
collecting
that.
metal, tinfoil?
Oh, yes, I remember rolls of tinfoil. The more
Tell
the
me
better,
about that.
yes. Turning it in, yes. Yeah, I remember that.
Anybody else remember that?
Well, no.
Collecting the tinfoil?
No.
Do you remember the slogan, Lucky Strike Green has gone to
Oh,
war?
Yes,
that was on
yeah.
in the
That,
package.
yes.
Yes, the cigarette package.
That's,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Well, I had my mother was alive, my father was not, and she lived in Brighton Beach, and she was very active in making bandages
Oh, yes.
for the soldiers.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of her because there was a picture of her in the local paper. She was in charge of this small group of women who were
Nice.
making bandages and sending them overseas.
Well, volunteerism was something that,
Yes.
do you remember any of that stuff?
Oh, there were a lot of volunteers. Many older women were volunteers who, even if their families were gone, I mean, that was the idea, to help with the war, to help it be finished, to help them have whatever they wanted.
Do you have neighbors, friends who were overseas? Or boys that you knew, a neighborhood that were overseas? That
I didn't know many people. See, I was new to New
Yeah.
York, so I didn't know many.
any?
But
Well, I had a lot
assumed
of
that-
friends,
Yeah.
from our church group, our young men that went overseas. And one of them became a prisoner of war, but he did manage to escape. It was towards the end of the war, and he did get home safe. But we also, at home here, on Saturday nights, there was a wonderful place where they had a spiritual help for the young sailors and soldiers, and they called it the Sailors and Soldiers Meeting, and they had entertainment for them, and there was a place for them to meet. As a matter of fact, my sister met her future husband there, who was a sailor on the Enterprise. But it was an uplift for the young men that were, a lot of them were naval, and so when the boat was in harbor, they could go there and get some
That was
spiritual.
nice. That was good.
Yes.
What about mail?
Oh, every day.
What kind of mail did you get?
Well, I looked for my husband-to-be, the letter that he sent me every day. That was
Had it
important.
every day too. Every day.
What kind of mail was it?
V-mail.
Yeah.
That's thin.
Describe what V-mail
Oh,
is.
so thin.
V-mail is this big,
Yes.
little, maybe 5 by 7. And he had to write. He only used, it's one page, and he had to write such tiny writing that when I looked at it the other day, I thought, my eyesight must have been excellent because I read it fast. I was with my daughter the other night, and she said, "Mom, can you read the V-mail?" I said, "Well, there are a lot of personal stuff in it, so I don't know if I want to read it."
Phoebe, you were getting that kind of mail too?
Yes, I was, and sending it too, yeah, but it was,
It was amazing they had that kind of communication, though, that we could get mail every single day.
And
That
there
was
wasn't anything necessarily
terrific.
blocked out in what I got, and I don't know whether my husband was being very, very careful not to
Yeah.
to go
Mine
over the
wasn't more
line,
so,
but
That's
yeah,
right.
probably was.
It's censorship they had.
Yes.
But it
Could-
kept us in close touch with our men
Sure.
that were
yeah, and when you read
overseas.
them over, and
right.
they're very touching, and you
Yes.
say, "Oh, I didn't know he loved me that much." Now I say
Yeah.
that. At the time, I was just glad to get it.
Well, this
Distance
whole-
lens enchantment.
I'm sorry.
Distance lens
Enchantment, yeah.
That's an old.
Well, you all had distance, that's a cinch.
That's
Yes.
for sure.
What else do you recall that happened at that time?
But I don't think that the younger generation, I'm talking about our children and so forth, I don't think they have any concept of what
Not
it was
really.
like. None. I mean, they know there was a war. They know it was bad. They know that maybe our husbands were in it and they didn't know. But today, they have no concept of what
Well, did you
happened.
go to the movies?
Yes.
What did you see
Yes.
there?
Yeah.
Yes.
The newsreels
I
full
don't
of
remember.
it.
And what
Much
do you remember
action.
about the newsreels?
The
Oh,
action
that
of
was
it.
big news.
Yeah.
I think that was really what made you aware, aside from listening to the radio. It was almost important that when you did go to the movies, that's what you stayed for, was the news. Yeah.
Wasn't the news on first before the movie?
Oh, I think
In
so.
some theaters,
thought so.
in
Yeah.
some, it depended upon
Yeah.
the movie that was
I
being
thought as soon
shown.
as you went in, the first thing was the news, and then you'd have the movie. If I remember, I don't know. But we went for the news.
Yeah, that was so clear.
Did you
And
buy
then-
any war bonds? Or did family?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
What do you know about that?
Yes.
Definitely.
I happen to have here war stamps. You remember they were selling 10 cents a stamp?
We're not that old. We don't remember that.
I don't remember that.
A bouquet was $1.
Yeah.
Oh, that was sold as a bouquet?
Yes.
I never saw
My
that.
goodness.
Oh, yeah.
But don't forget, the economy was totally different.
Yes.
Not only the stamps.
But
our
how about
living.
vegetables?
What we bought, everything was, we were not on that same money scale where everything is so
Yes.
high that you couldn't have.
But then didn't
afford
we
it.
all go crazy for victory gardens?
Uh-huh.
Because absolutely, if you had a patch of land, or some neighbors would get together and plant things, because we had to have good food in some way. We knew about nutrition, I think. And so I remember
is
the victory
true.
gardens. They
Where did
called
you
them.
put your victory garden?
In the backyard. we
backyard?
had a house,
Yeah.
and there was
I was in an apartment, so I.
Yeah, my mom had that in the backyard.
yeah.
Everything was so different.
Yes.
So different. That's why we're here talking to you today,
Yeah.
because we lived through it.